Hey everybody, welcome to the exit review for Prey.
Prey.
We've been wanting to do this review for a long time. Matt and I have both finished the game back in April when it came out.
Has it been that? Yeah, I guess it
I
has
think
been
it
a
came
little
out.
while.
I
yeah.
think it came out in April. If not, then it came out in May. But it's been a couple months.
Oh, Matt, man with the iron beard here. I know you don't recognize me. These new glasses, they help me peer into the soul of the game.
So we each have individually come up with scores for different aspects of the game, and we're going to talk about those and share those. And then at the end, we're each going to give our final score, and we're going to average those together for the official gaming resume score for Prey. Neither of us know what the other has rated the game, so this should be
I'm real worried.
pretty exciting.
I'm worried. I'm not ready. I think yours is gonna be lower than mine.
It might be. We'll see. So before we jump in and we start talking about the game specifics, what is your background on Prey, so everybody understands the starting point that you came into the game with?
So I was a really, really big fan of Bioshock. Played System Shock as well. Not when it released, but I played it afterwards and appreciated the difference, kind of the evolution into Bioshock. Huge fan of Bioshock. Not so much Bioshock 2. Loved Bioshock Infinite. And then I also played... we're talking about a game series that has technically nothing to do with Prey. I did play the original Prey. We've talked about that in one of our podcasts before.
Right.
So I experienced that when it came out. Lord, I feel old. I was like freshman year of college or something like that. But so I've experienced pretty much everything along the line. And then I was super, super hyped for Prey 2 when they showed that crazy like bounty hunter cinematic trailer that was based off the first game. And very sad when they let it go. And then cautiously optimistic when I found out that Arcane was doing a version. But really, my hype levels didn't start to get pretty crazy until like a month before release. Like what they showed at E3 was intriguing, but I didn't know enough. And once I found out that it was a System Shock spiritual successor, I was just like, so what about you?
So I did not play the original Prey. I did not play System Shock. I did play Bioshock, and I did see the announcement trailer for Prey at Bethesda's E3 2016 press conference. I think that was last year.
Yep.
And it looked great. And really, that's all I knew about the game until we did our gaming resume for Prey on, I think, our third podcast. Excuse me. My allergies are flaring up today. And at that time, I kind of discovered when doing research for the game that it had Metroidvania-like gameplay elements to it. So I said, okay, well, there's not a whole lot coming out around the time of its release, so I had time for it. And
Yeah, I
gave it a
remember I
go.
was kind of shocked that you picked it up, actually. Caught me off guard.
Bioshocked?
Okay. Starting early, ladies and gentlemen.
Early. All right, let's jump into things. So we're going to start with the story.
Oh, boy.
I'm hiding my scores and my notes. I don't want Matt to see what I have to say. I gotta look for story. It's all the way at the bottom. It should go without saying. Spoilers. Spoiler
Yes.
alert all over the place.
This is your warning.
Yeah.
We will ruin this game.
Get out now. Even in the areas that are not story related, we're probably going to talk spoilers. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if you just want to know the score, skip to the end. But otherwise, hopefully you played the game if you're still listening.
Yeah.
All right. So story. So I did actually play a little bit of the demo before.
That's right. Yeah, you did.
Before picking up the game, and the general concept is you are working for a company. You're one of the family members that owns a company that is doing experiments out in space.
Yeah, the U family, which I think it's supposed to be your parents, your mother, your father, you, and your brother, and you can play as either a female or male character. So you can either be Michelle. Is it Michelle and I forget now.
Morgan, you.
Morgan. Oh no, Morgan. It's Morgan because it's an androgynous name. That's right. Yeah, Morgan. You either way. So yeah, you're part of the family that founded it, and you're also deeply entrenched in the research that they're doing, which you know very little about at the very beginning of the game.
and they start off the game where you are down on Earth, and they pull you from your apartment. They send a helicopter over to get you, and they said, okay, we need to run some tests before we send you up to the space station.
Yep.
And so things don't go so well during said tests. And
Well, I only play sci-fi games where everything wraps up nice, tidy in a box in the first 20 minutes, and then I go home.
you quickly find out that things aren't always what they seem, and spoilers, you were in space the whole time.
It's M. Night Shyamalan-esque.
Yeah.
They just pull it on you right away. Yeah. So a scientist gets attacked by an alien, and then all of a sudden you get gassed, and you wake up in your apartment again, but things are amiss, and then you realize really quickly that everything you saw in the first 15 minutes was a facade.
Yep.
That you're actually on a space station, and that things have gone like total haywire.
So kind of like Bioshock, and I haven't played System Shock, but I believe it's the same. You start the game and you are in a facility, if you will. In Bioshock, it was a city that something has already happened. Crap has already gone down, and now you are waking up, discovering this city after its heyday, and stuff has gone to crap, and you've got to figure out a way to escape or solve the problem.
There's going to be a lot of comparisons to Bioshock because you can tell how much they love that game and how much they followed that pacing, like the introduction. You know, you think one thing's going on, then all of a sudden it changes, and you're slowly weaned into this very suspenseful situation. But yeah, and then kind of, I don't know, how are we going to summarize the entire thing? I mean, a lot of things happen.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't have to summarize the whole story. We can just talk about.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe. I mean, how did you feel about the story overall? Like, it's obviously a great setup. Like, I think the initial setup is fantastic.
The initial setup was great. By the time I got to the end, I was very frustrated.
And we're discussing mainline story here.
Yes. Mainline story. Well, I mean, for the score in general, it was everything. But the mainline story, I was disappointed. So let me jump straight to the ending. The ending's completely turned me off from this game. I was very frustrated.
I mean, it's not as bad as the Bioshock ending.
It's close.
Yeah.
Because it just ends, and then you can have a couple different options based on how you played the game.
Right. So basically, there's this whole interesting plot line where what you find out is that you have a form of amnesia because you are injecting yourself with what is essentially the plasmids in the game.
Yep.
But what you realize is that when you inject yourself with a power, I forget exactly what they call them, stims, or I can't remember. I'm forgetting the specific names. It's been a couple months since we played it. But what is essentially the plasmid powers that they inject you with creates like a memory backup when they inject them into you.
At the time of injection.
So they inject you with these powers. Well, when they go to remove them, it like reboots your brain and takes you back to that point.
Yeah.
So you don't remember anything that happened while you had them. So they've had you on this daily cycle where they've been testing these abilities on you and then resetting you by removing them. So now everything's gone haywire. You have what you have, and you find out that between your deprogramming sessions, you were programming a robot because you believed that things were going to go horribly wrong with the experiments you were doing, and you needed to destroy the space station. January basically is a copy of you telling you have to blow this place up.
Right.
So you spend the whole game thinking, okay, got to blow it up, and your brother's trying to talk you out of it. And there's a lot of choice along the way. I mean, not really a lot of choice because essentially it bakes down, and no matter what you choose, the ending is pretty much the same. You get a very short video, and I remember when you first finished it, they kind of pull the wool over your eyes because they show you this little video clip with like a 10-second dialogue piece, and you're like, that's the ending.
And credits.
And he was like, that's the worst ending I've ever seen in a video game ever, because it was either blow it up, save it, like, because you could neutralize like the main hive mind or whatever,
right,
or like escape, right? You could blow it up and escape too, and then they hit you with a real ending after the credits.
And the real ending made it far, far, far worse because it's like, okay, I chose to blow it up. I blow up the space station because I'm like, gotta save Earth. I get it. I don't want these aliens getting down to Earth. And then you find out, well, no, that actually already happened. They already got to Earth. And the entire stupid game, you were actually reliving Morgan's memories inside of
Right.
one of the I don't even remember what they're called.
The Typhon.
The Typhon.
The Typhon.
Morgan's been dead the whole time, and it's like,
Right. Morgan
what?
died regardless, and you're actually playing as a Typhon at the end of the game, and they pull this twist on you where they're like, we were so obsessed with injecting humans with Typhon DNA that we never thought what would happen when we injected a Typhon with human DNA. And like the world is going to shit basically, and they've got you strapped into a chair, and you realize that you're a Typhon who thinks it's Morgan you, and they've been trying to convince you, and you've been in a simulation the whole time, and all the personalities that were mainline personalities in the game were actually just like simulated drone personalities. And so they debate whether you did a good job, were you empathetic,
Right.
were you brutal? It kind of like quantifies the way you play the game. Were you lawful good? Were you neutral chaos? And then they go, well, are we going to kill him or should we like let him loose? And I've never seen, have you seen a version of the ending where they actually kill you?
yes.
See, I've never actually seen that version, but there is a version I think where if you were just like a total asshole, they just...
Actually, I don't remember if I did. I think I saw the endings where they were going to let me live, and then I had the chance
They give
to
you-
just chill and let things happen, or
Right.
then I could kill them all. It was, I did not like it.
They're trying to do like a meta commentary on the nature of choice in video games, like the binary nature of what you think is good and bad and blah, 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 blah. And then at the end, they're like, well, we're going to like boil it all down to this, and we're going to give you one last choice that really means nothing, because it either changes from he goes to shake your hand and you're like, all right, yeah, let's be buddies, I'm going to help you, or you just kill everybody in the room. So it's very much, it is so meta. But I have to agree, in the broad scope of what I liked about the narrative, I just didn't care. Like when it got down to that, it just didn't matter to me anymore.
I think so. Even just ignoring the ending, so just like the whole progression of the story, something I really liked was the emails. I really liked telling the story through text, in a similar manner to how Bioshock had the audio voxophone, whatever they were. I liked being able to go on computers and read people emailing each other saying, dude, there's something going on, you need to come over here, or they're talking about their Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah.
There was a lot of back and forth in emails that I think a lot of people probably would skip because you just want to play the game. You don't want to sit there and read. But I thought they were bite-sized enough emails that I was interested in reading them, although towards the end I stopped caring because I spent so long during the first part of the game just exploring and not progressing the main story. I wanted to do everything I could before progressing. And because of that, I probably spent 20 or so hours in the game before one of the survivors actually showed up.
Right.
Like people started talking into my earpiece and I'm like, wait,
There
there's
are
other
people
people that are
alive.
alive?
Right.
And then like another 10 hours later, I finally meet like a whole squadron of people.
Right.
And I'm like, this completely changes my perception of what has been going on in the space station this whole time. And it totally... I actually liked the space station being almost empty of people.
Right.
I think the first guy you find is the cook in the kitchen. And it was like, whoa, there's actually a dude that's alive, but... Actually, no, that's not true. You find one of the experimentees in like a prison cell, and you have the ability to let him out or kill him.
Yeah, but he's not. So there are 4 mainline characters that have pretty persistent narratives throughout the game. There's your girlfriend, or your ex-girlfriend. There's the
Michelle.
I believe so. There's the black scientist
that was in the space crate.
That you rescue. There's the chick who you mostly experience her story through email.
The security the chief of security.
Well, there's the chief of security
who
you meet, but then there's the one who I think you have the most exposure to, but you only meet her once. She's the one hovering outside the space station. She's the one with the whole storyline with her girlfriend. And she's the one who runs like the D&D group and sets all that up. And I don't know, this might be optional. You can meet her where she's like comes and peers through the window and talks to you through the gymnasium, right? And she might have had like she had such a strong narrative all the way through because you're just constantly reading about her. Those are the four main ones. You do have a couple of other, but I'm the opposite. I don't normally like reading, and I found myself constantly pulled into the individual narratives. Like I felt like I was getting to know this depth of character that was going on there because they gave it to you in bite-sized chunks, and they had a lot of personality, and the audio tapes were good, and you really could like see all the little storylines that like almost didn't even matter in the broad scheme of things, but they were so much more interesting than this, oh god, aliens are going to blow up the world, like they're going to take over Earth and kill us all. I didn't care about that, but I cared about her relationship with her girlfriend and like the tension there, and your relationship with your ex-girlfriend and the scientist, and sort of the oh god, there was that crazy good storyline with your ex-girlfriend where you have to tell her the truth about her father, who was a prisoner, an experimentee. Did you get to that?
No, I started skipping a lot of the side content because I stopped caring towards the end.
You find out that you made the call to unleash a typhon on her father, who was a prisoner, because you're using prisoners.
Right.
And you have to decide whether you're going to confess to her that you found out that you did it, or whether you're going to keep it a secret. Like, those are the moments that I loved in that game. So that's why when I got to the end, it was just like, oh, yeah, who cares?
So I think I've said all I wanted to say about the story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we talk in our scoring system, we have the pacing, which I thought the pacing was pretty solid. Towards the second half, it gets a little weird, especially when like the giant typhon monster comes crashing through and you talk to your brother in person. But I really enjoy the subplot. The main plot, take it or leave it. So we're gonna go.
So.
Oh no.
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead and go first.
So I thought the story was good. Good on our scale is a 6.
Oh man. Oh.
And I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for that, but that's okay. It did more good than it did bad, but at the end, the ending was just so god awful. I stopped caring about the characters, and I mean, it wasn't super spectacular of a story to begin with. I think a lot of it has to do with the immersion. I really like the emails. I really like the opening twist, and it started out strong, but then it fizzled out for me by the end.
So in our actual format, we say story. This includes a narrative, character, personalities, pacing, dialogue, lore, etc.
Yep.
So, and on our scale, 6 is good, has its problems, but the good outshines the bad. So you were overall. I gave it an 8.
Okay.
Which was a pretty awesome. Starting to get hyped when talking about it, but need to ignore some things. And I think the reason that I was willing to go that high, I would agree with you on the main story. It was fine. But when we talk about character and those plots and the lore and just there's so many, like, I feel like 75% of the story had nothing to do with the story, and that's the stuff that just got me. Like, I was just in it for all of it, and the voice acting, the dialogue was fantastic. So I thought all that stuff was really close to like perfect. It's unfortunate that it was marred by a mainline. So, but I couldn't go as high as like a 9 or something. But I thought an 8 was a pretty 6. Oh, that's harsh.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
That's fine. That actually might not be as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
Let's talk about the gameplay. Which the gameplay was really good in this game. I've got a lot of stuff I want to talk about with the gameplay. Where should we start off? Okay.
So it is in many ways it plays a lot like System Shock or Bioshock. Mm-hmm. It does the classic, like give you a wrench and start you with melee, and then eventually give you ranged weapons and abilities and all that, just as like a base level for gameplay.
It had a great progression system. It had a great, you can play it how you want to, and it didn't feel like there was any point where one path was stronger than another path, kind of like in Deus Ex, where they're like, you can do any route, but really you need to be stealth.
Yeah, I thought the level of freedom was mind-blowingly good, because you could play that game without any of the alien powers if you really wanted to. You could play that game without ever meleeing or without ever shooting.
I played it without the alien powers, by the way.
Yeah. And there are so many interesting alien powers. Mm-hmm. I think the replayability from that standpoint is kind of crazy, but they didn't punish you for not choosing what was the preferred methodology. They didn't design it with a certain way in mind. So
I thought the glue gun was amazing.
oh,
Being able to create your own platforms, like initially it was just like, oh, what is this? But once you realize, because of how Metroidvania this game is, and there's so many different ways to get places, like the glue gun will get you places, but you have to be smart with how you're using it. Like, you may not realize there's something around and up over the corner, but if you use the glue gun to hop up there, it's like, oh, there's something there, and you may not have seen it otherwise.
Right. I think that this game had emergent gameplay on a similar level to something like Breath of the Wild when you really think about it. They gave you, we talked about Breath of the Wild, which I wasn't in the review, but I know we talked about in our initial impressions how it's kind of a toy box. Mm-hmm. And this game did that so well. There were 5 different ways to do everything, and never once did they steer you in a direction. They just gave you what is essentially a non-linear world, an open space that they unlock gradually depending on how you decide to unlock it. And then they gave you the tools. You had the glue gun. You know, if you wanted to be stealthy, you could. If you were going to be hacky, you know, that might let you open other doors. If you wanted to be athletic, like, you could pick things up and move them out of the way. Like, there's some areas you needed to be able to, like, lift things. And they just, like, it never forced you into one corner.
This wasn't part of my score, but I do gotta point out that you could get just the basic lift to where you can throw things, and then you could go up to those doors where there's, like, the level 3 refrigerator in front of it, and you could just pick up like a level 1 microwave and just throw it at the refrigerator, and it would move it out of the way over time.
Really?
You could just keep hitting it. The physics were broken, and so I only ever did level 1 because I was like, I'll just throw stuff at it until it moves.
Well, you were able to get into like the areas with like the giant crates?
Yeah,
too?
you could.
Really?
You couldn't actually pick them up, but you could use the physics to throw stuff at it, and it would.
I wonder whether they ever
over.
patched that. I didn't know that. I went all the way to level 4 strength.
Oh, we should probably mention. We should have done this up front. You played it on PC.
Yes.
I played it on the PlayStation 4.
And I played it on hard. He played it on...
I played it on regular.
But then you went down to easy at one point, didn't you?
Okay, so that's one of the negative points about this game. It was too damn hard. Even the difficulty being on easy, no, it was tough.
I mean, yes, it was difficult, but I think that you had to learn to do things a certain way. Like, combat was challenging because you could take a lot of damage very quickly, and enemies some of the big Typhon could feel like they had a lot of health. But if you used the weakness system to your advantage, if you knew the right thing to hit, because it was all based around this idea that you would research the Typhon and you would find out that each type had a certain strength and a certain weakness, and some things wouldn't even work against them, right? So if you found the Typhon that was weak to fire, the easiest way to kill them was hit them with something that's fiery.
Yep.
It would slightly disable them and super weaken them, and then I would just unload with the handgun.
It was still too hard. And please don't hear me complain like I'm just terrible at video games. I love Soulsborne as much as the next guy. I love difficult games, but
that's what surprised me
even
with
on
you.
But even on easy, it was difficult, and I'm like,
it surprised
come on,
me.
you gotta. It just didn't feel like there was a good range of. I still beat it.
There are 3 things that I don't have a good threshold for: spicy food, scary movies and games, and difficulty in games, because they're things that I love ramped up to the max. Like, so I can't judge for other people, but it did shock me that you found it that difficult, because I know that you've played the Soulsborne games. I know that you've played difficult video games.
I mean, like, even on easy, like those floating electric dudes, they were bullet sponges, and it's like you could weaken them, and you're just unloading so much stuff on them. It's just like,
I found that if I could disable them with like a null wave grenade where they would just be dead in the water for a second, it would give me the kind of time that I needed.
But you can't kill them in one go. You got to do that like 3 or 4 times, even on easy.
It's I don't know. Maybe, how much did you like ramp up your handgun power? And
maxed.
And you found the golden gun too?
Probably didn't find the golden gun.
Because that's a more powerful
I maxed
version.
out my shotgun.
That's odd.
Shotgun was fantastic.
Yeah, it was really,
that
really
was
good.
very good for like the regular Typhon.
Well, yeah. Speaking of which, branching into, I think another thing that this game like nailed was there were a lot of very basic combat mechanics. There was no iron sights or anything, but feedback loop. Tell me a game has had better feedback loop than this, where everything was so tactile. Like, just the way the silenced handgun felt, like the way it sounded, and the shotgun and the glue gun, and even like when you would walk up to monitors, if you didn't want to zoom all the way into them and have them take the full screen, and it would click, like the game rewarded you. I describe feedback loop as like when you get one of those clickers for dog training, and you give them a treat, but you also go you know, and they're like, they want to, it's like the pen sound, right? You can use it to teach them, like when they hear that sound, ooh, and the game does that. It's like, oh, you know, you want to push that button on the laptop. It feels so good. And even like the recycler, when you would hit everything and it would be like, and you would just hold the button and it would vacuum everything in. It became addictive. Like I felt like a chimpanzee with a banana sometimes. I was just like, I just wanted, I love this little bit where I just hit the button.
I loved how you could craft neuromods.
Oh, yes.
It made it broken at a point, but it was still too hard.
Right.
So maybe not too broken.
Well, they gave you, even on hard, I found that resources were never really lacking. I could craft all the bullets and the med kits I needed, but I might have to sacrifice, like, that might have been too easy, actually. I think, yeah, the balance might have been a little weird there because combat was very hard, but resource management wasn't that hard as long as you were searching everything.
Right.
And if you got the right mods, because that's like there were mods where if you killed things, like you would get more resources from them, like you could harvest. But oh god, it felt so good in a way that so few first-person shooters feel. So I have to give it that. I mean, I will. There's more things to go over in gameplay. I can tell you my gameplay score is pretty high.
I thought the level design was really great. I mean, we briefly talked about it, but it. Just so many different paths and so many different hidden things and so many different ways to access stuff.
Yeah.
And it was very close quarters, and it was not a horror game, but there were times where I would jump, not because it was scary, but because the music kicks in like like right when you turn a corner and something's like right in your face.
It really, yeah. I mean, the level design was very good. It felt bigger than it probably was, especially when you unlocked it and had to go retracing your steps a lot. But then they gave you that interesting access of going outside the space station,
yeah, that
and
was
you
good.
could fly. Like that felt amazing. A and B, it gave you access in a way that, because they never held your hand and gave you a quick travel, right? And it wasn't so linear like Bioshock where you were only allowed to be in the level you were allowed to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they found a pretty good balance, although there were times that annoyed me where if I got down one path and then I really wanted to go somewhere else, I wasn't able to do it. Like, it would have been nice to be able to get around a little bit easier, but I can't really complain because there were so many branching pathways in everywhere.
Right.
That station felt alive, just as like a piece of hardware. Sorry, my phone's vibrating.
It's Onyx and Rodolfo being jerks.
They might be talking about what we video later today. But yeah, I mean, it as a open world game goes, I thought it was phenomenal.
One last thing I do want to mention about the gameplay. I think it's worth mentioning the mimics.
Mm-hmm.
I liked them as an enemy, but man, were they hard to deal with. Like, if they get up close to you, I'm like, where'd you go? Where? And not even from them disappearing. I thought that was clever. I loved that piece of it. Like, walking into a room and not knowing what of these cups and plants and stuff is actually a
I
mimic.
think you're just bad at video games, Sean.
But it would, like, come at you, and then it would, like, scurry to the side, and it was like... I wasn't playing with Twitch PC controls. So
oh,
it's just
yeah,
like,
that's true.
oh, my God, where is this thing? And just, I'm like flailing my wrench around. And
I imagine that game was harder on console than it was on PC. But speaking of that, I loved when you walked into the room and the scientists had put yellow stickies all over everything. Not mimic, not mimic, not
yeah,
mimic,
that
not
was
mimic.
cool.
I was like, this is...
I
like that plays both in the narrative and in the gameplay, where I was just like, oh, this is so, like, the love that went into this. Like, every room, nothing felt like filler. There was no hallway. There was no room that didn't feel like it had personality. And then, I mean, on top of that, the way the enemies spawned, like, it was similar to Bioshock in that there was a procedurally based enemy system, but it was real clever about scaling up to what you were doing, right? Like, remember when they first introduced the nightmare?
Mm-hmm.
And then the nightmare becomes more and more of a problem. And then if you read up, you find out that the nightmare becomes a persistent thing once you've got a certain amount of typhon in you. And if you can either escape him or kill him, he'll go away for a while. But it's constantly sending this force after you to try and kill you.
Yep.
Every time you go in an area, they would change up the enemy patterns to try and, like, stump you.
Yep.
And then on top of that, they made you make these hard choices gameplay-wise, because if you use turrets a lot, so you love setting up turrets, if you had more than 2 Typhon implants, the turrets would start to
turn on you. Yeah.
right? But then you could hack them, so you
Yeah.
could like there was all this great interweaving. Like that's
It was
why
very
I think,
rock paper scissors.
yeah,
like, keep
but
going around.
you could play that game like 5 times and have completely different builds every
I
time.
definitely want to replay it at some point.
Yeah, I started
the
a new
gameplay was that
playthrough,
good.
but I didn't have a chance to continue because there's just so many good games this year.
So what would you rate the gameplay?
I gave it a 9.
9.
I was so torn on whether it was an 8 or a 9. Because it didn't necessarily do anything super original. That was why I was tempted to give it an 8 because like is it? But first person shooter as a genre is very difficult to be innovative with, and I realized that from a pure entertainment standpoint, from a joy to play, like they did that Blizzard thing where they just polished everything so well and made it just good enough to me.
Gameplay wise.
Okay. Gameplay. I'm not talking about story here. We don't need to get into that. But just
we'll
like
get to the rest of it soon.
it was like the EverQuest to WoW jump for gameplay,
Okay.
right? It was like
Fair
the Team Fortress 2 to Overwatch gameplay upgrade, right? It's like, man, we just knew how to make this feel right. So I can't say it's perfect because maybe there was room there to be a little more original, and it did have some weird physics, kind of that Half-Life style stuff, but it was real close for me.
I gave it an 8, so not too far. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I had a blast playing it. I would play again. 8 out of 10 would play again.
I know that you're big. I mean, we as a group tend to value story a lot in games. I will let off story if I feel like the game wasn't designed with that in mind, but I know that Sean might be the only person I've ever met who's even more driven by story. Well, actually, Rudy's like that too. Really? Or maybe Onyx.
Onyx definitely is not. Gameplay is king.
Oh yeah, no, he is, and him and Rudy argue about it all the time. Love you guys. Play Prey. It's got
Prey.
Got an okay story, but it feels great.
We haven't gotten to the end yet, but Prey is worth playing. I think we should talk about sound next.
Yes.
The audio.
Yeah.
How'd
you feel about it? I know you're a big proponent of music in video games.
I loved the soundtrack in this game more so than I did for Doom. I'm blanking on the composer, but it was the same guy that did the soundtrack for Doom, and he was getting nominations for soundtrack of the year last year. I loved the soundtrack in Prey. It was so good. It had a very sci-fi feel to it.
Yeah.
It had a very ambient feel to it. I loved the opening. I think the name of the track is Everything Will Be All Right, or Everything is Going to Be Fine, or Everything Will Be Okay. When you get into the helicopter and you're flying and you're just seeing like the opening credits out on the city.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a game called The Journeyman Project, which was another game that took place in space, kind of. It was a time travel-like game from the 90s. It was an adventure point-and-click game. And it had a similar music style to at least that song.
Right.
And it was so good. And throughout the game, just like the atmospheric music that would pop in, there was a pop song, I think, at one point.
Yeah,
when, you're
when she's singing,
the karaoke bar.
You have to turn on the pop song and defend while like you wait for her recorded song. Which that song is jamming. Like I can hear it in my head right now. They did a couple versions of it, but it was good. Yeah, I think for a game like that that's very suspense and horror driven, sound is 90% of that battle. And this game was not a horror game. It wasn't like Doom 2004 or a Dead Space where they throw you in pitch black and try to scare the crap out of you. It's a suspense game. I would say it's even trying less than the original Bioshock to like really scare the crap out of you. But the sound did such a good job of keeping you on the edge of your seat, and it would seamlessly blend depending on the situation. Like, I know a game has thought about its sound a lot when the audio cue tips you off to something bad before you've even seen the bad thing, right? And it seamlessly, it's just, oh crap, and then you see it,
Or even the lack of sound, or lack of music rather. Like when it gets quiet and you're slowly going through like a darker area, you know something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or maybe something doesn't happen, and it does that on purpose to get you thinking something will happen so that there's a twist when something doesn't happen.
It really understands dynamic, too, because, like, the time you spend in a vacuum where the sound's all, like, muffled out and you barely hear anything, And then like the moments when you have no music, but you're in an ambient area of the space station and it's loud in a quiet way. There's just like the hum of things behind you, and it just creates this constant sort of like it's
You can
crawling
hear,
under
like,
your skin.
sparks,
Yeah.
like from an open cable or something. You're like, oh,
And
no,
then
no, it's just cable.
the Typhon had a very distinct sound where
They
you would
did.
hear them like
Yeah.
like walking around, and you'd be like, oh, where is it? Where is it? I gotta find it. Like you would almost hear him before you'd see him half the time. Yeah, I thought the sound design was excellent.
The one thing I did not like about the sound design piece of it was the mixing. I thought there were times where the mixing was just not very good.
Did you play with speakers or a headset?
Both.
Okay.
I think it just got like really loud in certain points when it should have been quieter. And that's not like a volume setting. Like it was like just everything that was going on screen, it kind of got jumbled. It was really bad in the demo, and I made sure to set aside how bad the mixing was in the demo with how it was actually in the game.
Right.
Because like whenever a Typhon appeared in the demo, like the music got really loud, and it just kept going.
Did they
And
fix that?
They
Like,
did fix.
wow.
They fixed it, but I noticed here and there it still had a couple issues, but
Right.
it wasn't anything too detracting.
Right.
And then the vocal work it wasn't the greatest dub in the world, but it wasn't bad. I was kind of neutral towards it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the voices matched the characters pretty well. It felt. I mean, have you played Dishonored?
No, not really.
It felt very. And I mean, it is an arcane game. It felt very Dishonored. Like the characters felt like their voices matched them, and there were a couple of pretty distinct ones. Like I can still hear the cook. He would call you Emule. Like
Yeah, he had a really good accent.
and he just like persistently is messing with you throughout the game, and like he'll just be messaging you all these weird like his voiceover will just kick in and he'll be talking about, he sounds like he's on drugs the whole time, but that was the one voice that really stuck in my head. But I mean, I thought Morgan's performance was good. I thought your brother's
His was
performance,
good.
like I thought all the mainline characters were pretty, they were natural, so I didn't really question it.
I like the turret vocals.
Oh yeah.
Like, I can't remember what they say at this point. But
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that Portal.
It,
like,
yeah, it had a very Portal feel
You can
to
tell. I mean, this game is just a tribute to so many things. Gesundheit. Oh no, did I rate it an 8 or a 6? I can't tell.
I sneezed all over it. I can't. No, I didn't sneeze. That'd be
Oh.
too gross.
All right, so what would you have rated, or did you have anything else that you wanted to cover? What did you rate the audio?
I actually gave it a 9.
Oh.
I was very impressed. Obviously, the soundtrack is what elevated it to that height. I think if the soundtrack was mediocre, it would probably float back down to a 7 or an 8. But yeah, I thought the audio in this game was fantastic.
I give it a 9 as well.
We agreed on something. There you go.
Hey, we haven't been that far off, aside
No,
from
we
the
haven't.
story.
Aside from the story,
I
well,
may have been a little more forgiving of what was a bad main plot line than you were.
well, then let's see where
Oh, here's
things
the
end up.
big
This is
one.
yeah.
This will be interesting.
This will be a point of
because-
contention, I think.
Well, because you played on
I played on PS4.
console, and I played on PC, so there are different considerations to take into account too.
And you are the artist of the group, so I'd be very interested to see what your visual score is. So we're talking visuals is where we're going now. You kick us off.
You know, it's interesting with Arcane, with every game they've released thus far, which I have not played Dishonored 2. I've been tempted to, but I guess their B team worked on that while they were working on this. They're never super pushing the boundaries of the technical aspect, right? They're never going for the most gorgeous game in terms of like technical photorealism, any of that stuff. But they have an undeniable unique style. The way the characters look, the way their environments are, there's almost like just a slightly caricatured version to it. And they definitely embrace this sort of alternate look. This, you know, in Dishonored, it's a bit steampunky. In Prey, it was kind of like an Art Deco feel. You know, the space station didn't feel industrial. I mean, it did where it needed to, but it also had a lot of that kind of rapture-y flavor to it. Like, you couldn't necessarily put a date on it. And I thought, like the suits were really different from like I told Ashley I want to cosplay as like one of those because I loved just the simple but good looking like red and leather, like red and brown leather suit with like the crazy helmet. I thought it just had this chic sort of classic look to it. So I thought style wise,
that was one of the two things they absolutely nailed with this game.
Right.
It was the art design.
I thought it was beautiful.
It was. I don't want to say it was Rapture in space because it wasn't Rapture,
No.
but it had. You could see influences of that in the art design, and it was consistent. The art design was consistent throughout the game, and it felt real. It felt immersive.
Right. It kind of went the opposite route of like what a Ridley Scott would do in an Alien movie, where he's like, "Oh, they're truckers in space," and it's very industrial and dirty and grungy.
Yeah.
Whereas they were thinking about it from we have all these scientists living in space perpetually.
People are living here. This is a home.
Yeah, they need to be able to feel.
It's a Google office in space.
Yeah, basically. But other games have done that. Like Mass Effect does it with the Citadel, but the Citadel tries to be very natural, right?
More
like a planet.
Yeah.
Whereas this was like,
yeah.
well, we can't do that, but we can make this an appealing. It's like a modern home, right? Like all of this retro stuff that it was infused to make it feel like if you walked onto that space station and you were like looking to rent an apartment, you're like, oh, this is nice. But then you'd go into living areas and they'd have like the sort of Deus Ex or like Ridley Scott style like hole in the wall like bunks, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's functional spaces in here.
It was modern, but it wasn't sterile. It wasn't like your typical sterile space environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which
it was warm.
It was it was warm.
Which is
That's
funny
good
for
way
a
of putting
game that is very suspense driven. But that's part of what I think made the corruption of it feel so great, was when you're in the living areas and everything's messed up. Like they had all the plants around, but then there's all this like broken and like zombie Typhon corpses lying around.
Well, and that's the other thing I think they nailed with this game is the enemy designs, not just in how they functioned, but in how they animated. Even just the mimics crawling along the ground, the animations for that look fantastic. They are so fluid in their movements. That was probably the most impressive part of the whole game for me, was seeing how the Typhon moved around.
You know what just occurred to me? Have you seen Edge of Tomorrow?
No. With Tom Cruise?
Yeah, Live, Die, Repeat with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. Great movie. They're doing a sequel. Absolutely love it. The enemies in that, I think, are called mimics, too.
Are they really?
And they have a very similar style in terms of, they're very, organic, but then, also kind of weirdly sci-fi mechanical. And, yeah, it's got that same sort of multi-legged, stabbing. And, yeah, it felt great. I mean, the animation quality, I actually know someone who animated on that.
Well, there you go.
Chelsea Stewart, if you ever get a chance to watch this.
Props to you, Chelsea.
Worked for a little studio over here in Florida that did some animation work.
Did a
good
great
job. Great job. I saw all your scenes. I talked to her specifically. Lip sync was on. It was beautiful. Proud of you, Chelsea. She's already yay now. So, but yeah. So
that's where I draw the line at the good things. So if you had any other good things.
Okay, I'm really curious as to what have you got that was bad.
So where do I start?
Oh man.
A lot of this was technical. It wasn't the actual.
I was gonna say I don't know what else you would give it crap for.
No, it was very technical. So I thought there were some contrast issues in certain places, especially when using the flashlight. Like it would be extremely dark and then extremely bright, and like white bright. Like it was. There wasn't a good transition between the darks and the lights. It wasn't everywhere. Like when you walk into a lit room, it was fine. But when you're going down certain corridors and in certain areas where the lighting wasn't as great, it wasn't so good, in my opinion.
I wonder whether that was a console versus PC thing. I mean,
it could have been.
I'm playing on a 1440p IPS, really bright, G-Sync 144 hertz monitor, and on PC. So the inputs are different and the outputs are different, right? You're playing on your TV at home. Because I was
playing on my monitor.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were playing on your monitor. I remember thinking there was a distinct lack of dark light contrast. I never felt like any of the areas got dark enough for me, for the most part. And I barely even remember there being a flashlight because I barely remember having to use it. But maybe we just played on different brightness levels.
We probably
too.
did.
Yeah.
And I fiddled around with it trying to fix it, but it never got there.
What
for
other
me.
contrasts or what other technical issues did you notice?
The geometry went into weird places at some points. Like you just have like floating humans, like dead corpses, just like floating there, or stuff would go through, like boxes would go through each other. It just took you out of the.
Yeah, it sounds like
broke the immersion
it
a
sounds like their
little bit.
console version struggled more.
I think it probably did. And then like when it drives me nuts in games where this happens, but I've gotten so used to it on consoles where when you go to spin, like you're going to turn around behind you and everything just it's just a big blurry mess.
Oh, because they automatically turn on motion blur.
Yeah. And it's just like
I tend to turn motion blur off on games, but you don't really have that option on the console.
Right. Like when you're just running straight and like briefly turning to like aim a gun, it's fine. But like during the adventure pieces where you're moving all over the place, it got really annoying.
Yeah, I could see that. This is why PC Master Race is a thing. The only technical issue I had, and I have a beast of a system. I mean, I've got a GTX 1070 with a very nice Haswell E 6-core 12-thread processor. I mean, I've got all the bells and whistles. Like that computer costs probably like upwards of 6 times the console that that Sean's playing on. So it was not the best optimized game. I didn't have too many troubles when you're playing at 1440p, which is essentially 2K. So not 4K, not pushing that boundary. If I can't get at least like 70 frames pretty consistently, I know that a game is either challenging or poorly optimized. And this game is not super technically demanding, so I felt like it could have been better optimized. I only had one area that just killed my computer, and I would see drops to like 15 frames per second if I wasn't careful. It was the reactor area that was incredibly vertical.
Oh yeah.
And I would walk in there, and because the game was loading all that in at the same time, when I would go to like look down, like especially initially when I got in, my frames would tank from like 60, 70 to just like 15. I'd be like, and there's nothing worse than inconsistent frame issues. And I don't use vertical sync because it's a G-Sync monitor. It will automatically take care of tearing for me. So that was unfortunate. That was reflective of the engine not being quite as well optimized, but that was my only technical problem.
I didn't have that problem on consoles, but that's probably because they lock the frame rate.
They get to even everything out there. Yeah, there's a little less flux. So what was your visual score?
So I gave it a 7, which is great.
It had a lot of
on our scale.
I mean, if I had those kind of tech issues too.
You got to remember, we did play different versions of the game.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, I gave it a 9, and the only reason it didn't. I mean, I don't know if it would have gotten a 10. It would have had to have been stunningly gorgeous, and I thought it was style-wise stunningly gorgeous, but maybe not as technically. It could have used more 4K textures and all that, but the frame stutter took it out a little bit, but I thought it was real close for me.
Okay.
So.
Well, there you have it. I think we got through it. I think so. Now we're moving on to our final score area.
Right.
I still love this game, regardless of the score I'm about to say.
Right.
I loved it. I want to play it again.
Yeah.
It was a great game.
So your final score
is a 7.4.
Ooh, that feels so low.
But see, that's the thing with our scoring system is that 5 is average and 6 is good, and I think a lot of folks that give games a 7 are really what we would give a 5.
Yeah, because in truth, because of the way we've been corrupted by the grading scale, where really everything's from a 7 to a 10. Like if it's not in that range, it's bad. So my final score was 8.7.
Which means, if I do my math right, I think our average is an 8.1.
I can live with that.
An 8.1. So it was pretty awesome. Starting to get hyped when talking about it, but we need to ignore some things for it to be perfect.
And I think what you said, regardless of that score, that's still a game of the year contender to me.
Anything 8 and up, game of the year material.
But even with your 7.4, there was a spirit to that game. Just like, because what we don't take into account when we sit down and we rate this is how much fun did you have, because that's what it's.
I had a blast playing this game.
It's so
really
entertaining.
It is.
I rarely get games anymore where, because of adult life, I get to sit down and just go, I'm playing this every chance I get. And I beat that game in like 3 sittings. I could not stop. So yeah, I know I said in our last podcast that Breath of the Wild, but I gotta say, from like, would be my current game of the year, but I gotta say, from a pure entertainment standpoint, Prey might be it. Well, I just finished Nier, but we're not allowed to talk about that yet, so I hadn't played Nier last time we spoke.
Please don't murder Matt in the comments saying, "How dare you say Prey is better than Zelda?"
I'm not saying it's better, but
you have more fun with it.
Best picture is
Personally.
never the most entertaining movie, is
That's
it?
true.
Right?
That's true.
It's
well, Return of the King was pretty. Anyway.
Oh, we're going that far back.
I had to dig up some stuff.
I love Prey. If you got a chance, we should start telling people to skip to the end if they want to get our impression on whether to play it without spoilers. We'll have to start putting that in here. If you did decide to check out at the very end just to see what our score was like, absolutely play this game.
Definitely play Prey.
And give us what your score was. I'd love to hear what other people think.
Let us know how much did you agree with us? How much did you disagree with us?
That wasn't too bad.
No.
We're a very cordial pair here.
I mean, it came out to an 8, and I want to say I think we actually are giving it a higher score in general than Metacritic gave it. I think it's in the high 7s.
I actually haven't looked. Yeah.
I think it's in the high 7s. At least it's been a couple months, so I don't remember.
We're too agreeable here. People are so used to me fighting with you on everything, but when it comes to a game like this that we both enjoyed, what am I supposed to fight with you on?
Well, I mean, I had a 7.4. You had an 8.8, so that is pretty far away.
Yeah, but I can totally empathize with where you're coming from.
I'm okay with an 8.1.
If we ever review like Ni no Kuni, then I'll just like.
Well, that got delayed till January. So anyway, that was our review. Hope you guys liked it. Let us know what you thought. We'll see you next time. Like what you saw? Check out some of our other videos and be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest content. Thanks for your support and thanks for watching.